Donald Trump, he lies, that's no secret, but some of his lies are much bigger than others. So while Trump maintains net positive marks on immigration, a lot of that is likely due to how he and his team have tainted the facts of what they're really doing. So they'll tell you all day on every news show about how they're rounding up violent criminal migrants or terrorists when they really want to spice things up. But have they? Is that what they're actually doing? So remember this story from a couple of months ago. The headline says US deports 250 alleged gang members to El Salvador despite court ruling to halt the flights. It says Trump invoked a 1798 law previously used to detain Japanese Americans in the Second World War to justify deportations. So Trump ignored the court and his allies hammered Democrats for defending criminals. But oops, we just learned that the Trump administration knew that the vast majority of these people were not actually criminals. So this is a headline from ProPublica. Trump administration knew vast majority of Venezuelans sent to Salvadoran prison had not been convicted of US crimes. Homeland Security records reveal that officials knew that more than half of the 238 deportees were labeled as having no criminal record in the US and had only violated immigration laws. So this is what they were on the record as saying about these people. Trump and his aides have branded the Venezuelans as rapists, savages, monsters, and the worst of the worst. When multiple news organizations put, where is it? Sorry, I lost my place. When multiple news organizations disputed those assertions with reporting that showed many of the deportees did not have criminal records, the administration doubled down. It said that its assessment of the deportees was based on a thorough vetting process that included looking at crimes committed both inside and outside of the United States. So what's interesting about that is that it actually conflicts with their own data. The government's own data, which was obtained by ProPublica, the Texas Tribune, and a team of journalists from Venezuela showed that officials knew that only 32 of the deportees had been convicted of US crimes, and that most were nonviolent offenses such as retail theft or traffic violations. The data indicated that the government knew that only 6 of the immigrants were convicted of violent crimes, 4 for assault, 1 for kidnapping, and 1 for a weapons offense. And it shows that officials were aware that more than half, or 130 of them, of the deportees were not labeled as having any criminal convictions or pending charges. They were labeled as having only violated immigration laws. So the White House's response to all of this is that is from the White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson. She said in response to the findings that ProPublica should be embarrassed that they are doing the bidding of criminal illegal aliens who are a threat, adding that the American people strongly support the president's immigration agenda. It's like, did you not hear anything that was just said? And her response says, continues to use that same language that we were just talking about, Jayar, continues to say that these are criminal illegal aliens. They are a threat to the American people, even though all of the evidence shows that no, they're not threats, they're not criminals, and you know that, right? We know that you know that they're not criminals and they're not illegal aliens. So it's very troubling because, like the things that they say don't matter. And if the American people strongly support this, then why? And you have to assume that at least part of the reason why American people still support this is apart from the fact that they might just be very xenophobic. They really do believe in the rhetoric that these are terrorists and that these are gang members and these are violent criminals.
Well, they don't get this much of the information. Again, like anything else, we talked earlier, about the bill and the way they're trying to cut Medicaid for everyone. If they figure people don't have enough time to get their hands on the information, so they just say things. Look, this response from Abigail Jackson, it's emblematic of exactly what the first headlines were. Those headlines earlier that you read talking about, it turns out that the Trump administration knew that these folks weren't gang members. The ICE agents that deported them knew that they weren't gang members. And also the people that opposed them knew they weren't gang members. We all knew that as they were sitting there lying to our faces. It's just there was too many other things going on. We know this from the Project 2025 playbook. The point is to blitzkrieg everyone with all of this mass disinformation, hatefulness, distracting things, firing people, disrupting agencies, releasing a bunch of criminals into the streets. Let's keep it real. So who the violent criminals from the January 6th rioters that ran up on the Capitol? Once they were released, several of them were rearrested. One of them got killed in like a shootout with the cops. So we ignore those stories when we're talking about the violent criminals. It's why they hated so much with all the attention that was on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And when the senator went over to Venezuela to actually talk to him, they didn't like that attention being put on it because they had to continue to say the lies. And the more they have to talk about that, the more people pay attention to what the details were behind it. And the more people know the details behind it, the more they go, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. But if they get to say it one time, and then there's some pushback, and then they say it another time, and they go, anybody, the American people strongly support the president's immigration agenda. Based on what? What poll? What American people did you talk to? Mike Johnson earlier said, I'll go to any town hall and talk about this big, beautiful bill. I'll go to any town hall and talk about how we need to cut and take 7.7 million people off of Medicaid. And they'll all nod their head in agreement. He said that multiple times because that's the stupid talking point that he goes with. You know, the last time Mike Johnson had a town hall meeting was like 2.5 years ago. Has nothing to do with him going to town halls and anybody listening to him and nodding their heads, because the bastard doesn't go to town halls, he's afraid. When he heard about people pushing back on folks at town halls, Mike Johnson said that they're paid agitators and they're not really American constituents that have anything to do with where they are. That's what Mike Johnson says in reality, but he doesn't want enough people to see the reality behind the lies that he consistently tells. It's lie, 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 lie. And then as the truth is all simmering beneath the surface, they hope you don't find out about it because you're too busy distracted by the fact that you can't afford groceries.
Yeah, it's all very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's not cynical on this. Like, it's just evil. It's just mean, you know. And it's so disrespectful because they just assume that most people aren't paying attention, and they assume that most people don't know who is to blame for certain things, and they just assume that most people hear lies and just say maybe, you know, and even though there's so much evidence to disprove it. And maybe they're right, you know, maybe a lot of their base really is just not paying attention, really is just listening to whatever it is that they're saying. I remember, like, I've used this example before, but there was a guy, a Trump supporter, who said to me one time that, you know, something that Trump did, and I was like, I don't think that's right. And then I looked into it, and the thing that he was talking about was something that happened before Trump was even president. It was during the Obama administration. And I was like, how does that even make sense, you know? But the reason why he believed it is because Trump kept saying that he did this thing from before he was the president. It makes no sense, but they really just believe whatever they say. So.
If you enjoyed that, then make sure that you never miss another video by subscribing. And if you want a little more, consider hitting the join button and becoming a member. So you're probably wondering, why would I do that? Well, when you do that, you get access to bonus content that I make every single week, and it's a lot of fun. You get custom emojis and more. If you join at tier 3, by the way, you even get access to a monthly member hangout with myself. And you'll get all that going forward, but you'll also unlock years of the back catalog that is literally 100 or more bonus clips and top 10 lists and debates and more. So what are you waiting for?